Hello Year 12, welcome to our first video of the topic the blueprint of life. We are looking at changes that affect evolution. So to give you a bit of context today, we are looking at a deep exploration of, for our first part of our topic, a deep exploration of evolution from a biological point of view. And whilst you have looked at this in Year 10, we're going to explore some of these concepts from the basics. So, simply put, here, evolution is descent with modification. And the reason why this is a particularly good definition is that it allows us to really focus on what this unit is all about. So later on we'll be exploring small-scale evolution, which is all about changes in genes, and the way that they appear in a population. And then the first part of our topic is all about large-scale evolution. So we're looking at the descent of different species from a common ancestor, and what evidence we have for that. So studying evolution allows us to look at, kind of get an understanding of where has life come from, and by looking at what happened in the past, we can kind of use evolution as a way to kind of frame, what are humans doing and how does this have an impact on the future of different species or the future of life on Earth. So some kind of big questions at the end of our topic coming up. Anyway, I'm pretty excited about it. I hope you guys are. It's a cool topic. It does require a bit of diligence, but I think you will come out of it well enlightened about evolution and genetics. So, our first conversation, our first dot point is outlining how changes in the physical environment, changes in the chemical environment, and competition of resource can impact evolution. So, we're going to break each one of these down and give you some examples of each one, and hopefully it'll make sense. Alright, our first one is that our physical environment can change, and it's going to happen for a bunch of different reasons, and it changes the abiotic factors on the planet. So, Australia has drifted north, and the climate has become more seasonal, drier, and hotter. You can see that if we follow, I'll just flick that one through, we can see Australia here. It's slowly drifting north away from the poles. Once it happens, it starts about 25 million years ago. We go on a big march. About 25 million years ago, we marched north, and we're still kind of marching north. But here we are, close to the equator, and significantly drier and hotter than we were before. So how does this impact evolution? Right, so our old kangaroos were really small. They kind of resembled what the wallaby looks like now. And these kangaroos had pretty much unspecialized teeth. They didn't kind of need particular shaped teeth to break down the soft rainforesty type food that was just everywhere. They could ignore all the crappy food that was about, and they could just eat the good stuff. And so if we compare to what a wallaby's diet looks like, you can see this kind of like flat tooth row. They're largely unspecialized here, and that kind of makes sense. If we compare it to what a kangaroo's got now, though, as the vegetation changed, they have a curved tooth row with high crowns, and it's this high crowning that allows the high crown molars that allows the kangaroo to kind of masticate, and that is kind of like chewing and grinding that food up, that hard plant material up for them to eat. That was a relatively common evolutionary trait for grazing animals, is that their teeth changed as it got hotter and drier. So we went from an animal point of view, we've got changes in the kangaroo, but from the plant point of view, we have the rainforesty, succulent, moist environment to grasslands that thrived in a slightly drier and hotter environment. And then we get these hard asses. Alright, that was physical changes. Let's look at chemical changes. So chemical changes can happen. There can be two impacts of it. The first comes from just a presence of a particular chemical. So we're really just looking at kind of like the base, kind of generally not overtly complex molecules, but looking at kind of like the presence of salts or different elements. And we've already kind of studied these ones. We're looking at saline environments, and we know that there are adaptations of organisms to these saline environments. And so here we have a salt marsh, we have salt bushes, they have glands to secrete salt there, and that vegetation would have changed when that salt started to become prevalent in those regions. So these salt marshes didn't always exist. Sometimes the water table brings these salts up, and over time the vegetation changes. So there's our plant example. We're going to look at it can result in microevolution. So we're going to look at rapid observable changes in a population, and you should be relatively comfortable with this concept, because I think it's how it's kind of taught in year 10. Is mainly when a new chemical is introduced, you're not generally going to kill everything. So we did a test with that's meant to be DDT, but we did a test with this chemical. DDT was an insecticide, and it was a really effective insecticide, and we sprayed it on mosquito populations and it decimated them. We're talking like 99% of all mosquito populations that were sprayed were killed, and it was that 1% that had a resistance to this DDT, and while the numbers were decimated, there was still enough for those mosquitoes to have a viable population, and that population boomed, and they passed on their traits, and those traits were included that DDT resistance. And so then DDT as an insecticide became ineffective. This is what we call microevolution. It happens on an observable scale. That's a big difference between macroevolution and microevolution. Macroevolution is things like the evolution of dinosaurs from a single-celled organism. That might have taken 1.8 billion years, or whatever the number is. That is not observable. We have no clue about that. But yeah, we've had a couple of other examples in society of this microevolution. We have bacteria resistance to penicillin, and we'll explore that, the devastating effect of that on health later on in our next in our topic after this. But that's a pretty crazy one. That's a big 21st century problem there, that antibiotic resistance. And one that's relevant to Australia is that we have rabbits that were resistant to the myxoma virus. So they were contracting the myxomatosis, and we did this as a biological control. We wanted to get rid of all the rabbits, and similar to the mosquitoes, we didn't kill off all of them. It was something like 99.9%. And over a period of about 30 years, the rabbit populations increased back to numbers where they became a pest again, and we had to figure out some other sort of biological control. And so there's a bit of a conversation there. So I think that's relatively straightforward. The addition to a chemical, so you can be kind of like trying to treat something, or just the natural presence of a chemical like a salt can change the way evolution is moving. All right, the last one, as someone who studied ecology at uni, I love this type of stuff. I love looking at the competition of resources in an ecosystem, and it's great that we can link it to evolution here. So when you have, in an ecosystem, when you have resources at a finite supply, it kind of stands to reason that the species that will flourish is the species that is the best competitor for those resources. And so there's two types of competition. You can have intra-specific competition. So this is where competition between members of the same species compete for the same resource. So that would be food, water, and sexual partners. This, I don't think, is the most significant impact. Has the most significant impact of the two on evolution, because generally those animals will move away rather than compete and kill off both, and wear each other down. It's not good for either of the survival, so they'll generally spread. Whereas if we have interspecific competition, where you have competitions between members of different species, so you remove sexual partners from that, and you may include shelter, you have major issues. So if we look at this, let's look at blue is one species and red is another. In a period of time of day where they're both hunting, this is where you'll see the competition occur. So I wanted to put this chart up here. Like, I made this chart just for this slide to show you that competition doesn't have to happen 24 hours a day. It may just be that there's an overlap of activity, and that's when they're competing. But that may have an impact on the survivability of a species. So that's a pretty important concept to have. So competition results in a couple of things. One is that we have when you have a competitor in an environment and outcompetes everything, you're going to lose diversity. And Australia has been on the raw end of this stick. We have been absolutely smashed by European species or North American species that just have come into Australia and just devastated the environment. So the examples that you might have for this are the rabbits, coming in and ousting the bilbies. You've got the B2 bush outcompeting acacia species. You just lose a lot of diversity because of that. The second part is that the second type of impact that it can have on evolution is increased specialization. So if those species that are competing for the same resources avoid competing directly, you may find that they start to specialize. And this is, I guess, where, it's kind of the start of the conversation where you might think that nocturnal species might appear when they're kind of forced into operating at a different period of time. And so, if you say, oh, this possum can see at night and it's nocturnal, well, it's not nocturnal because it can see at night. It can see at night because it's nocturnal. It's kind of like over a long period of time, possums that had that ability to see better at night survived better in night environments, and so while they were active at night, so that kind of goes along there. But anyway, these are three cool concepts, and hopefully that makes a bit of sense. All right, so I think you guys quite liked these summary tables. They seem to kind of help people kind of if you're in a bit of a rush with note taking. So we're going to try and include them as best we can. A summary of kind of concepts that have been discussed. Yeah. Alright, we are in class in our next lesson, and we need to be researching. One of the next stop points is provide a case study on an organism that has changed due to a physical change in the environment. And there's a cool little case study to look at. Alright, I'm out.